All right, we're going to be waiting just a couple minutes for people to flood in, and then we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you again. I'm so excited.
I don't know why, but I feel kind of like starstruck having Bernard here because I love Toon Boom software. So I'm just like, hi, thank you so much for Storyboard Pro 7 and the updates you did because it's phenomenal.
You're welcome.
Wonderful.
I didn't do that. We got a great team behind us.
Take the credit anyways.
Just take it.
I'm taking it. I'm on it.
It's all what this is what it's all about here. All right. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the second panel of Kinematic Fest weekend, How to Get Ahead. And I'm Eric Miranda. I'm going to be moderating today's panel, and I'm going to introduce all our wonderful panelists right now. So we have Carl Reed. Carl is the co-founder of Lionforge, the president of Lionforge Animation, and also the president of Lionforge Labs, which specializes in game and animation. Ashley Lamb is a Webster alumni, as well as a storyboard artist and revisionist, who has worked as a production coordinator on Ride the Last Dragon, a production assistant on Frozen 2, and a storyboard revisionist on Let's Go Luna. Cody Stokes is a director of films, documentaries, and commercials whose first narrative feature film, The Ghost Who Walks, won the jury award at the 2018 US in Progress section of the Champs Elise Film Festival and Best Narrative at the 2019 Bushwick Film Festival. Bernard Boiteau has 15 years of experience in sales, marketing, and business development, and currently works as an educational sales director at Toon Boom Animation. Kirk Hawkins is the president of Big League Productions, which is a company that specializes in video production, television advertising, training videos, graphic design, script writing, crewing, casting, and location scouting. Josh Guffey is a filmmaker in St. Louis and a producer of Vidzu Media Downtown. He recently completed his first feature film, All Gone Wrong, this year. Welcome, everyone. Again, thank you all for being here. So we're just going to hop right into it. Why not? Let's go into the deep end. So as us students are early on in our quote unquote careers and getting into filmmaking, animation, and the industry, what are some steps that you all took early in your careers that led you to where you are now? And this is just open floor, whoever wants to go for it.
I can go. I was super vocal in what I wanted to do, even as I was in my last semester at school when I knew I wanted to work in film and TV. And so I would ask everyone that I knew if they knew someone who lived in LA and who worked in the entertainment industry. And it turned out that one of my teachers went to school with the guy who is the vice president of VFX at Warner Brothers. And so she hooked me up with him and we just like hung out for a bit. I got to watch a little bit of the Hobbit's dailies as they came in. And so it's a way of never discount who you know that may know someone. It's just being very vocal about what you want, because when I was in live action and I decided I wanted to work in animation, people would ask me, what is it that you want to do? Because no one wants to be a PA forever. And I said, I want to work in feature animation. So the people who cared would actually give my information to their friends that knew someone who worked in animation or worked in animation themselves. And that's how I started to get to know people, get to know the industry, and how I got my resume into some studios for some interviews. And took me 3 years, but I'm here. I did it.
That's really fast, by the way.
Apparently, yeah. So be very loud, but politely so.
I guess I'm kind of the opposite of that. I was not very clear in what I wanted, and so you like sort of the cynical side of that coin that I experienced is, if you were not vocal in what you want. And if you are, I guess there's many ways to think of this in terms of whether you get hired to be sort of on a crew for something, whether it's animation or a film or something, or whether you want to be a filmmaker and make your own film. is if you aren't clear with people around you on what you want or what you're trying to do or what you're pursuing, they want to keep you where they know you. They want to make sure that because let's say they like you, let's say they hire you, and now you do a great job for them. Well, not a lot of them are going to offer to move you up the ladder because they don't want to lose you in the place that they have you. And then if you say, if you're very clear and you do your homework and you try to do what Ashley did and you sort of try to gain knowledge from other people through mentorship or all that stuff, you can move up the ladder and you can consistently tell people, this is what I want to do. Whereas if you are expecting, like I kind of did, which sounds, it sounds terrible, but I'm glad I can admit it now because I'm sort of settling into a place where I like, you're just going to be where you are. And if you're starting out and that's in the entry level position of a PA, you're going to PA for basically, 8 years like I did. And I got to work on some really cool stuff, but ultimately that's where you're going to be if you don't really articulate to yourself what you want to do and then be open to telling other people what that is.
Building off of what Josh just said, it's the exact, and Ashley as well, exactly that. Like, you have to be vocal. Like, we came out in 2011, we started our comic book publishing company. And then to transition over to animation, folks were like, you produce comics, what do you know about cartoons, right? And little did they know that throughout the 2000s, I worked in broadcast animation on TV shows and every step of production, right? But they know me as this publisher of comic books. And so they're like, what do you know about animation? So very quickly, we kind of had to go and do our own thing and prove it. And luckily, when we announced, I think if you don't know how long animation takes, it can take anywhere from 12 months to 5 years to even longer, depending on what you're doing. And we spun off our animation studio in 2018, and we had to have a piece to show people, hey, we're not just a publisher, we know our stuff. So we got involved with we were looking around for a short film, and that's when we came across Hair Love. And so we did that, brought it to market, just expecting to kind of get it out and say, this is the type of content we make. Everyone, we know what we're doing. And then the market kind of really took to it, and we wound up winning an Academy Award. And so it proved that not only are we comic book guys, but we kind of know we like cartoons too. And so sometimes you have to not only be vocal, but in addition to knocking on doors and letting people know you exist, get out there and make some stuff that'll prove it.
And I think real quick, just jumping in, I think everything they said is 100% true. But to Carl's point, he was great at comic books first, right? He did that job really well. And so when you're a PA, don't go telling everyone you want to be a director and then be a shitty PA. No one, they won't trust you for anything better if you're bad at the job you have there. So be vocal and be focused, but commit to the work you're doing. I think that's the one thing I see people fail at the most, is they have some idea that they're supposed to be somewhere else on this road, and they tell you all about that. And then while they're doing that, they're not doing the job that you hired them to do. And you will never get anyone to help you if you don't show up and do the work you're supposed to do. And everyone on this panel is on this panel because they did those jobs really well. They just didn't linger longer than they needed to in those spots.
I think going along with what Cody said, you need to also embrace the journey. Ashley was able to do this in 3 years. That's incredibly fast. Josh said 8 years. Carl, I don't know how long it took you, but you guys were, great at comic books first. The other thing Carl said is that he worked in every step of production before he went to show everybody that he could do animation. And I think that's key. You need to, a lot of times it's money for nothing. You get later, it's work for no money. You work every part of the job in production to learn what you're going to be pursuing. Maybe, you don't know immediately what you want to do, like Ashley, you have to find it, kind of like Josh. That's kind of what I did. I had a degree in television and a degree in art, and being able to combine those two loves and then learn every part of the production. There was a job that I did for, it was like 40 hours of work a week, and I was paid $100 total for a 7-week job. So it didn't pay for anything. So the payment is not what I was after, but the experience was. And so I wrote it, shot it, produced it, edited it, directed it. I even hosted it was a coach's show for television in a small market. And I even hosted the show. I actually even directed a 3-camera production while I'm on camera. So, you have to do as much as you can, learn as much as you can about it. And then, to Cody's point, be good, be the best version you can be at what you're doing, be where your feet are, focus on what you're doing, do that best, and you're going to get noticed.
And if I can add to what Kirk was saying, it's also, if you see something you really want to do, you need to find the person that is strongest in that field near you and learn from them where you can. Whether it's getting paid or doing it for free, you need to be able to, if you have a passion for it, you really need to learn it, right? And I think, like everything else, is for myself personally, as I went through different jobs and different phases, I always seemed to gravitate to the one who was strongest within that field, because I learned the tips and tricks that they were doing and incorporate it into my own sauce. And I think that's where you really understand what your potential is. And the other part is get out of your comfort zone. If you're stuck, doing the things that you really want to do, and not experiment and try something new, you're just going to be pigeonholed. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's working in animation or being a chef. If you don't try the new things, you're just not going to grow as an individual and as an artist in many cases.
Wonderfully put, everyone. Going off of what a lot of you are saying, wanting to know what you want to do will get you further in this industry. But for students, whether it be freshmen or seniors, a lot of them don't really know what they want currently. Myself being kind of there as well, I really don't know. So what are some things that you all think that students can do now, even they might not know what they want to do in the future as a career? Or some steps that they can take right now that'll help them either figure it out or just get some work under their belts?
I would say take a step. You need to, first of all, set a direction. Your direction determines your destination, but take a step in that direction, even if you don't know, because you may find out 2 steps into that direction, this really isn't for me. Then you recalculate and, like a GPS, you move to the next step. But I would initiate something. Don't sit back and let it all pass you by. Be proactive.
Yeah, like what with Kirk said, I know the whole industry can seem really, really intimidating, especially when you just are paying like a butt ton of money to learn what to do. One thing that happens in all of my mentoring is that people are like, I don't know what to do. That's fine. That's totally cool. So while you're in school, through all these assignments that Chris and Mike are giving you, pay attention to what you do like. When you are designing a character, do you really like designing characters? If you want to be a character designer. Do you like backgrounds? Be a background designer. If you like modeling characters, do you like modeling sets? Do you like storyboarding? Do you like writing? The safest place for you to explore all this is in school through all of these structured assignments that they have set up for you. So go ahead and take notice of what you like. And when you get to your junior, senior year, when you start to consider what do I want to do, stay for the credits. After the movies, after the TV shows, look at all the different positions there are. There are going to be so many more that you never even thought was even a job, and start taking notes of those names. If you really liked the look of Raya and the Last Dragon and you liked all the sets, look at who designed that. It was Helen Chen. So look up her portfolio. What does she do? What does her portfolio look like? And how can you get to her level in order to start getting a job?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's kind of being a student of the game where, um, I guess my first question to people who are sort of still figuring it out is what brought you to this in the first place? Is why do you care about it? Like, as a little kid, I used to watch movies all the time, and then in college I used to watch 4 or 5 movies a day, and like it was just like filmmaking was a means to just sort of do the thing that I loved to just consume, and then try to like figure out, well, what does it mean, all these different areas, like what does it mean to do these well and to learn that craft. And there's a lot of schools of thought on this these days. Especially in sort of digital filmmaking and with social media, there's a real emphasis on being a generalist right now, knowing how to do many things, and I think there's a great place for that. And I think there's avenues for people who are really actually have a talent for many things. Me personally, I don't. So I'm not great with a camera. I've shot some short films in college, but I wasn't great. I'm not a great editor. I just landed in producing because I liked that kind of side of things, and helping sort of facilitate other people do the best work that they can, and sort of being somebody who is a manager in the true sense of the word, in that you're there to help the people actually doing the craft do it the best they can. And then in my own work, like learning how to write better, how to be a better director, how to be a better communicator, because that's ultimately what I'm doing every day, is how do I write an email that doesn't sound passive aggressive, but I need to have change happen. Like it's like, how do I do these things better, and just trying to make those micro improvements once you find that thing that you want to do. But I think just figure out, what is that moment when you're like, wait, there are jobs behind this. Like, and for some people it's like when you're a really little kid, you start to like have that kind of thought. Some people, like I was in high school, I took a TV broadcast class that I did all through high school. I started to direct the TV newscast of my high school, and you just get the bug. And so whatever sort of drove you to that, go for it, because ultimately the people who are doing it now at like the top of the field started there. Like it's not impossible, it's just a craft. It's something that you can learn and get better at. And then the very top people are people who have just like an extraordinary innate sense to do that thing. But to get really far, you just study, just really care about it, just be a student of the game.
Even the masters keep studying the game. I read something on Spielberg where he goes back every year and watches Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai, just to understand the technique that master put into place. And Spielberg's been doing this for what, 30 years, 40 years, and he doesn't stop. Even Scorsese, just because you've developed a name in the industry, you cannot stop learning from people that you consider your masters at what they do.
You know, in addition to, the continuous learning and kind of figuring out what you want to do, I would always suggest to, while you're, especially if you're in school, you have a great opportunity to create and release your own content. And don't just, a lot of folks, especially artists and artisans, they have this dream project and it'll never see the light of day. So I recommend that you know, anything that you're looking to create and release, that you do it on a schedule and get it done, and at the quality that you're at, understanding that it's not going to be the best, and you're going to learn from those mistakes and build off of those with each release. But if you never release, you can never grow from those mistakes. We're in a pretty unique time where you can upload something to YouTube and get some feedback. I mean, the comment sections are pretty like very, very aggressive, but if you soak through there, you can get some constructive feedback that can really help you grow. And you're your own worst critic too. And so sometimes you look at something that's complete and you did it, and that's great. But next time you're going to do this, next time you're going to improve this, next time you're going to improve that. And then you release again and do it on a schedule so it comes out, because you have to make choices. And when you're in a production environment, you're tied to those schedules. You can't decide, I don't like this, let me work on it for another 5 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, the summary of all this is get involved and finish. If you can't do those things, you have no future, right? Go do something else. Like they sound so simple, but they're simple because they're so hard to do. You don't have to say much more than that. If someone can get started and finish, that's really the main thing. And I think the other thing, everyone said some version of this, but there's a lot of ego in this industry, and we're all storytellers. So we tell this kind of great lie of there's certain people that are more important than others in a production process, but that is not the case. As we were saying, like, look at the credits. It takes, depending on the size of the production, takes up to thousands of people to make something happen. And you could be a very effective creator within that whole complex. So don't misunderstand that a career path and that a very like satisfying place for yourself in storytelling might not be under one of the 4 titles you might know about: director, producer, writer, cinematographer. Like that is rarely the case. And I know some of the people that are the most satisfied and frankly the most productive are people who early on were able to recognize that they didn't want to do that specific thing. They came out of film school and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a director because that's what everyone thinks they're going to do. But then when they realize, like, what does that mean? They're like, that doesn't sound fun. But there's this other thing that I've never heard of. And they excel at that, like VFX supervisor or something, right? They find a way to really love making films, and they're working on bigger stuff than most other people I know. And it's because they were open to letting their ego and their formulated ideas of what filmmaking is out of the way, and they really got immersed in the business. And I think that that's something that takes maturity. And so for people coming right out of school, it's hard to make that leap, but the sooner you can get there, the more successful and probably more satisfied you'll be.
Yeah, and reaching out to people, making your own work, posting it has become more important now more than ever with the way social media has affected us, especially in this past year. So I was just wondering, how do you guys view that, in which that social media has changed networking, changed getting your media out there, getting it viewed, connecting with others in the industry or in the fields that you want to work in? How has it changed now, and how do you see things going into the future? Do you see things staying like this, or progressing even further and just absolutely unimaginable ways? I was just wondering what you guys all thought about that.
When I started, I actually started as an illustrator for comics. I wanted to be a comic artist, and I would just make my portfolio here in St. Louis and was expecting the world to see it and to just, I'm like, I can draw, I know how to do what I'm doing, but I worked and worked and worked and got my portfolio done, and that's not enough. And I had to fly to San Diego every year, show my stuff around, and today it's insanely more easy. And I'm sure before that time, because we had a little bit of the internet back then, and we could like share things crudely. But now it's a whole different world. You can draw stick figures and people will recognize your writing. You can be a great artist and enter competitions or release even memes. And then you start to get noticed and start meeting like creators or people that share your interests. And I know my kids, for instance, they communicate and find friends online, period. Right? Like that's their 100% focus from a networking standpoint is online. And so right now we're in like a renaissance, and it is the Wild West. And I don't know how long it'll be like this, but I would definitely recommend that everyone get out there right now. And it's so easy to reach out to certain people. Like I know Clubhouse was released a little while ago. It's starting to get a little full, but in the beginning, you'll be in a channel, it's 10 people in the room. One of them directs some big movie, another one lives by you, and you're able to communicate directly with these folks that it would have taken, a lot of connections and you flying halfway across the country to reach. So we live in unprecedented times.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put a name on a platform, I mean, basically Instagram has sort of changed everything for me and how I do I always think of my career as sort of 2 tracks. There's like my day job, sort of how I work as a producer and director for a commercial production company, and then there's like me as a filmmaker trying to make films. and Instagram has just changed both of those dramatically. And for one, I think it speaks to what Carl's talking about. It's a visual medium, so it can be sort of semi-portfolio, and then also it has, just be able to sort of send a message to somebody. Like, I have recruited people to work for us who are now full-time and also freelance just by finding their work on Instagram and just falling in love with their profile and just seeing like, hey, here's clearly just a passionate creative person whose work I enjoy, and I just would love to work with them. And then and then on the other track, you can sort of like, just frankly, like, the movie I made is still working on distribution, and we have some pretty in-depth discussions going right now with one of our sort of dream distributors. But in order to vet sort of the sales agent people that we're dealing with, I reached out to filmmakers that they've worked with on Instagram and had calls with them like within an hour of sending them a message. And it's that fast. And I think Twitter is very similar, but I prefer Instagram because it is visual just at its heart. And then you can just sort of tell stories. You can just sort of be creative. You can kind of continually show people what you're about. And so Instagram for me has just been everything. I don't post a lot, and that's how I roll. Like, I don't want to sort of put myself out there like that. I'm kind of an older guy now, and I'm sort of legacy Facebook at heart, but Instagram in terms of communication and getting to see what other people are working on is like everything for me.
Yeah, I agree with Instagram and Twitter because I know people have gotten hired off of both platforms. And last week on Twitter, there's this thing called Portfolio Day, where 4 times a year you hashtag Portfolio Day with the job that you're looking for and with like 4 of your best pieces. And so many people are getting recruited off that, or at least they're getting conversations going, because what I like to use Twitter for is actually for information finding. What I did in school when I wanted to work in animation was I looked up those names after the credits and I looked them up on Twitter just to hear what the industry was like, what they're talking about. I got to know some of the issues that they face. A lot of them do threads of like, this is what it means to be a color stylist, because what the heck is that? I don't know. And then I would also follow them on Instagram for their art, because it's like, okay, you're telling me about what it's like to be a color stylist, but what does that look like? Oh, I'm going to look at your Instagram where you post your art so I can see what this is. And yeah, just utilize it. Just make it do what you want.
So I'm someone who's not on any social media at all, and I never have been, and that's partially my age helps with that. Like I was able to start when it was not the dominant force in the industry, and now I'm at a point in my career where I have people that kind of do that for me, right? I have agents, I have companies, I have reps. So like it allows me to have a mystique that just was happenstance, right? That I'm just not in that world. But as an outside observer of how that affects the industry, I think everything that's been said is totally crucial, and that's the positive side of it. The one thing I see though is it requires an extreme amount of discipline, just like everything else in the industry, because it's easy to get off track and to get distracted. And I watch a lot of people chase what they think is something worthwhile on social media, whether that's followers or a presence or whatever. And while they're doing that, they're not focused on the work that brought them to this industry in the first place and not excelling as a creator. And I think that, that's something that's just a more of a cautionary note on that front. I very much realize like I don't have a true perspective because I'm outside of it. But as someone who's on set all the time, who watches crews all the time, who watch how people interact, you see a lot of vacant content that comes through that. And I hear a lot of people that talk about what they made for, doesn't matter the platform. And I'm like, yeah, but what can you do for real? Like, what can you do on set? How could you handle the pressure of clients and this and that, or schedules? And so it's just like everything else. It's a very effective tool if used correctly, and it's a very detrimental thing if used incorrectly. I think that discerning nature is probably the most important thing to take forward, especially for a generation coming out of school right now, where like Carlos said, it's completely your literacy. It's your way of talking to people. That's a very new thing. And I think the other thing, I don't remember how exactly it's posed, but will it stay like this? Absolutely not. If we've learned anything, 5 years from now, everyone coming out of college now is going to be scratching their heads at the kids coming out of college going like, what are they doing? Because it's just happening so fast. And that's where it goes back to the quality of work, the quality of craft, and the effort you put into it. Because you can adapt to the other things. You can learn how to do those other things. But if you aren't at like the core, someone who is doing the work and putting the time in and actually finding your place and your skill set, the other stuff that's not going to fix that lack.
There's also the reverse. Speaking with a lot of studios that are in the process of hiring, and the demand for talent right now is at a level never, especially for animation, never seen in the history of production at any time. You know, we're tracking over 500 series that are looking for talent globally. It is a great time to be there. And when you're speaking to the studios and you're asking what are the biggest challenges that are out there, is when they are finding someone who has a talent, they will actually go through their social media and their postings. And if you start really having views, not how can I put this politely? Just don't. If you have views that are really out there, whether extreme right or left, it becomes a risk for you to get hired. You know, clean up your profile, clean up the images that you thought were funny 5 years ago and never went back to relook, because those things will prevent you from getting a job at one point, because you never know who's hiring you, what their political leanings are. You should focus on what you really want to do and how you want to do it. But all the other garbage is going to hold you back from getting a great job, whether at Lion Forge or Disney or Warner Brothers, because that's their reputation of who they're going to hire. And we've seen throughout the years, big name directors and people who are associated with huge projects suddenly get fired for something they've posted 20 years back. And they weren't the same person today as they were 20 years ago. So you need to keep that in mind. Whatever you're posting on your social media, that's what's representing you. And you should clean up, you know, go back and not sanitize, you know, keep some quirky things, but you really need to make sure that your profile is hireable.
Yes, absolutely. Social media, it affects us all in many different ways, whether we like it or not. And another thing, looking past how social media and like everything else online has affected us, COVID, the big word around the world right now, and it's changed each aspect of everyone's lives. And I'm just curious on, like, everyone here is from different medias, different forms, different productions. How does it affect you all personally, whether it be your day-to-day life or through your work?
Well, why don't we talk about just work? Because I think everyone's day-to-day life's been affected in a pretty big way. And since we all work in different facets of the industry, I mean, it's obviously like everything from theatrical, you know, feature film releases to just how do you shoot anything safely? You know, that's been tossed up in the air, and it's taken a full year to watch like an industry respond and misstep along the way and kind of stumble and regain and figure it out. You know, we were talking even before this started about just kind of things like Zoom, you know, the kind of beauty of technology that has allowed a certain amount of socialization, of education, of just day-to-day functioning to continue. And that's kind of the blessing of it, right? Like as a commercial director, I was able to continue working throughout the year. I was able to have a job throughout the year, but most of my job, the sets were much smaller, and I was communicating with, you know, however many people on a Zoom call who were, you know, wherever they needed to be. And that, had we not had that, that wouldn't have continued that way. But at the same time, it kind of opened up a new box of complications or opportunities, however you want to look at it, with how we move forward with production. So I think the big thing is you can see how fast an industry can change. You can see how fast, and that's not just our industry, that's the whole world, right? Like things changed within 1 year in a dramatic way for everybody moving forward. So, you know, kind of like I've said a few times, it just goes back to that, like the core elements of your skill set as a creator and your kind of work ethic and everything else. you are able to weather a storm better if you have those fundamentals taken care of, and are also open to the adaptation, the future of what's coming. Because next year will be a totally different thing. You know, hopefully some of the things we used to know will come back, but there's no guarantee of that.
No, I like how Cody said, uh, you can either see it as a challenge or an opportunity. And I think we need that more than ever right now because, you know, everyone feels like COVID is almost up, right? But at the same time, we're having like this increased wave, and they're saying maybe we might need to get more shots. So we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months, in a year. And you mentioned Zoom. Zoom bloomed during this time. You know, with the demise of traditional theater large magnate companies, you know, you have the SVODs kind of emerging like phoenixes in their ashes, right? Uh, while we all hope to get back in a theater, we don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, you can either see it as a challenge and, you know, wait around and kind of despair, or you can kind of try to make some predictions and get out there and try to get ahead of some things. I know you won't always be right. You know, we thought this would be over last fall. And so some of the things we were prepping, we are just like, okay, let's push it to next fall. But you never know what's going to happen. And right now, in my lifetime, nothing has been this drastic a change that's impacted so many people for so long. And we're in a whole the whole next year, and we still don't know what's going on. So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, even through some of the adversity.
Yeah, that's one of the great silver linings to what has been terrible is that because everything is now online, studios are hiring out of state, which is woohoo, you can apply in St. Louis and get a job in St. Louis, but they'll tell you like, we're starting to open up maybe in like August, we'll expect you to move here to like work with us, because animation still very much relies on the in-person collaboration because it's such a creative dynamic, which does operate best when you're in person. But now is a great opportunity for you to not only apply for virtual internships or mentorships, you can apply for jobs. You can also take classes that are more specifically geared towards working animation, because Webster will give you like a solid foundation as to what this is, but you don't get to specialize in storyboarding or set design. So being able to take this opportunity, I just answered a Q&A. You can also take script writing classes online. I'm taking a writing course where a girl in Australia joins us every morning, and she would never have been able to do this had it not been for Zoom. So definitely take note of what you want to do and just like Google this thing with online schools or classes, workshops, whatever.
If there is a positive takeaway from COVID, and as small as it is, it forced the studios to react. And in the past, you had two huge results that came from COVID. One, as the studios reacted, they realized that people are going to be watching more projects and more series on TV or streaming or however you want to watch it. And they just commissioned work, whether it's live action all the way through to animated content. We've never seen so many shows in production at any time. It also helped restart the cottage industry because all the studios had to force people to work from home. And we've supplied licenses to tons of studios and artists globally, to a point where the studios didn't lose a beat on their productions. And the studios realized they had a higher output or production speed going on because that interpersonal relationships within a studio slowed things down. Now people are focused and working, and the output that the studios are getting has just increased. And I know artists who are associated with one particular studio are now being courted by two other studios to do work for them, which is incredible. They've never had that before. But you know, as I indicated earlier, over 500 new animated series are greenlit right now. globally, which is huge. So you can be, yes, absolutely, in St. Louis, and you could be working on a project in India. That's how much of demand is out there. And also we're looking, we have to, COVID has also forced people to look internationally, because as those projects are being greenlit, especially for the streaming market, the need for overseas companies and studios have to compete with the Western. When we're looking at animation, the bar really is North America is the highest point you can go. Japan is quite high as well, but everyone else still has to develop and develop a project that will fit in with the Western content, right? You can't just take a project out of India and have it compete with Incredible. It just won't fit. It won't mesh. So a lot of these studios and businesses overseas are ready to hire people who understand the Western techniques, understand how to tell a story. There's tons of opportunities, not just here in North America, but a great way to cut your teeth is overseas.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sort of like industry adjacent to sort of Cody and what I understand about Kirk, sort of in sort of like a commercial filmmaking, but Cody works more sort of what I assume are higher budgets than ours, because ours are pretty bare bones. But so what I've noticed about sort of just overall trends, and I think everybody's sort of idea of how COVID has changed in terms of communication with Zoom is all correct. What it's done for us is a lot of our business was doing videos for live events, like documentaries that would play at these events. But now these events are still going, but they see us as sort of like a trusted video partner. And so now we are essentially recreating these entire live events through assembling videos to create sort of like a virtual broadcast. And so, for instance, we've done video for the Barnes Jewish Foundation Illumination Gala, which raises money for their cancer center, the Siteman Cancer Center. And that in years past, we've done 1 or 2 videos that have been like in-depth documentaries on certain doctors or patients. Now we're doing, instead of 1 or 2, we're doing like 25, and they'll all get added together to create the full show. And so in that respect, things have totally ramped up, but there's fewer shoot days. And what we'll do is remote interviews. And so I think what it's done is it sort of primed the audience a little bit to accept a lower quality in certain parts of content, and which to me I hate, but it is what it is, and this is the life we've chosen. So basically, that's where we are with that. And then it's created opportunities for people to, if you are a technical person and you like sort of like that kind of TV broadcast environment, that's happening now in these live events with applications that we use called live stream and things like that. So there's now additional positions that we've never hired before that we're hiring for now. And then I would say, just overall, COVID aside, it's been shorter videos, more deliverables, thinking about social a lot more from the outset. Sorry, I've got somebody's mowing their grass outside my window here. Yeah, I'll just take that as my cue to shut up. So.
Well, thank you all. That was very insightful, very wonderful. We're going to move on to Q&A now. So for any participants that haven't asked questions yet, feel free to send them in the Q&A and we'll try to get them all answered. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Carl and Ashley already responded to this one. We're going to respond to Spencer Marks. We're going to open up to everyone. Spencer asks, how do you keep your head up when it takes so long to get to the point where you want to be?
I'll just share a quick story. So the movie I just completed, I started writing it in right out of school in 2008, and it just got made. Like, I shot it in 2019, and then we cut it in 2020, and now it's probably going to get released this year, fingers crossed. And so I know that feeling. Whoever asked that question, I'm like, I was that person. And you just have to, the only person who is going to tell you that something is dead is you. A project, you can keep working on it your whole life if you love doing it. And so I would just say, be patient. A friend of mine, Brett Hoy, who I work with now, he has a great expression. A lot of times you think of a project and you think, in order to lift this project up into existence, I need a shovel the size of the project. But if you think of that project as a lot of little shovels, then all it takes is just diligence. And then you can do a little bit every day, and then pretty soon that thing is done. And that's what happened with us. I mean, one of my steps along the journey, and we talked about it earlier, like things you can do early in your career, like mentorship and things like that, was I moved to St. Louis from LA, and I was like kind of hoping that I could get this movie made, and I hadn't had any luck even in LA. And I had read about The Ghost Who Walks, Cody's film that came out a few years ago, and I was inspired by it. And he's not on social. He's a tough guy to find. So I tracked him down, and I had a coffee with him, and I just picked his brain, and he gave me a lot of confidence to try it out and just to set a shoot date and make the movie. And so, find people who will believe in you, or even just say, hey, it's doable. Like, just, it's been done. People do this stuff, and you can be one of those people. You just have to put in steady work, just be steady, create a schedule, and just follow it. And the work's not going to be great all the time, but one day it will be, and it'll be a great feeling. So that's how I got over that feeling in my life.
So, I mean, I guess to add to that, I was actually talking with a film director friend of mine who has made a very long career just doing sequels, just, horror movie sequels. And he lives in Hollywood and has a great life. And someone asked him, they kind of looked at that as a failing. And they kind of asked him as a director, like, how do you tolerate that? And his response was, well, I love the process. If you're worried about being able to tell people you did a thing, you're looking at the wrong end of the whole. That's the end, right? That's the end of the thing. You got to love doing it. And I'm not saying every one of us is able to do that. We all wrestle with what that moment of feeling like, oh man, this is not working. How do we keep going? But when you're able to reassess and go, at the end of the day, even if it's not the greatest thing that's ever been made, I'm making something, or I'm part of something. That's the fun. That's why you keep doing it. Because even when you finish whatever that is, the greatest movie you're ever going to make, blah, 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 you're going to start again anyway. So just try to enjoy that part of it. It's really hard. Like Josh, I suffered from that when I was younger too. I was always waiting, like there was going to be some door that opened. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm in the room now. There's no room. That's a lie, right? Like you just got to keep doing it. And I think that, again, we're an industry of storytellers, and we tell really fanciful stories about how it looks at the end when you're successful, but they're lies. I mean, they're just made up things, right? And so the people that get up and do it every day and love that part of it are generally the ones who, hey, you want to work with. They're more fun to work with because they're happy and they're good contributors. But they're the people who they're in it for the long haul. It's a marathon. It's not like a short little race, So very easily said, very hard to wrap your head around, but that's the challenge, is love the process of it.
Yeah, I worked at Barnes & Noble for 1.5 years after graduation, just trying to, sustain life in Los Angeles. And every day I would come home and I would draw. Drawing is what feeds me. And now it literally feeds me because it's a job. So it's just knowing that this is what you would rather do. Because if you want to stay in St. Louis, stay in St. Louis. If you want to be a bank manager, that's cool. But I know what my life would have looked like had I stayed in St. Louis, and that's what I knew I didn't want. But if LA didn't work out, I knew I could always go back to St. Louis, because I know this is your home base. You know what is here. You know what's safe. You know a whole ton of people that'll support you. LA is tough. There are so many times where I was just broken down and cried. I had a backup list of what to do when I had a crisis. And I was like, I'm never going to work in this industry. This is terrible. I wanted to be a teacher, and it's still there, but I've stuck with it And now I'm on such a momentum. It's just like, I love you, St. Louis, but I'm never coming back. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but also 5 years seems to be like the magic number for like all of me and my friends. Something just clicked. And like, I finally broke into animation. My husband became a voice actor. One of my best friends is working on a really big CW show. And it's just like, what happened at 5 years? I don't know. So try to stick it out for as long as you can. Have a backup plan if that's going to make you feel better, but just know that you are wanting a very big dream that is so big it intimidates so many people from not even starting. So the fact that you're getting a degree in animation and that you're here and that you're willing to even dare to think about pursuing it is ginormous. You're doing so well and you can keep doing well. You just have to stay steady in what you're doing.
You know, it may not be that much consolation, but nobody, let's take Lord of the Rings, for instance. If Lord of the Rings was Frodo got this ring, he took a plane ticket, or he bought a plane ticket, flew over and dropped the ring, and the end, right? No one would like this story. You have to really build the story. You hear about Always Sunny in Philadelphia and how they made that, whipped up a crew and went and made their own show, and then it went on to get picked up overnight. And you don't hear the details of that, and you also didn't participate on day one when they're sharing their ramen while they're filming the show, when the 10 attempts before that didn't work out that way. So you have to build that story, and ultimately it's really what makes it worth it. Because if you if you expect to create something and it's instantly, easily just a success, then it won't be special and everyone can do it. And I don't think it really makes much sense. But with sometimes with the social media, Instagram, there's negative sides to it. You see everyone, I'm such a famous director and I'm 18 years old and all of this good stuff. It can give you a false sense of how long things take. And there's a reason why people are like, hey, I'm 35 and I'm entry level in animation and I love it. I'm 40 and I'm just now getting my feet planted in a solid role. It takes time, and this is not just for entertainment. If you want to be a doctor after you graduate, you got some you got a lot of work to do. For no money, for little money, right? And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, you wake up and you're making 250, 300 a year, 300,000 a year, and it's like it happened overnight, but it didn't. So this is the same, man. What can really hurt you is looking at only the successes and not really having a group that's grinding with you, and that you're seeing we're all working our way up. No one's getting a easy pass or a cheat code. And having people around you that has that grind as well can help level set sometimes.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, I would also say develop your people skills, as silly as that sounds, because if you're developing your own project, story, whatnot, you're going to have to get that funded, right? You're going to have to go to the bank. You're going to have to be able to tell your story on why they should fund it, or you have to go to an investor. And that is always the biggest challenge I've met over the past 10 years working, whether it's in the educational side or overseeing the Asian Pacific market, where all these startups that go, I got this project, I don't know where to get the money. How do I find the funds? And you realize that they're awfully shy. You can't be shy. You're selling your project, your personality, your vision. You got to be able to talk to it. And if you're an introvert, as hard as it is, and I'm someone who can be rather shy, you really got to go out and break through that comfort zone and talk to people and understand how to get them to invest in your vision. And the only one who can do that is really you. No agent, no one else will be able to do it to that level of your passion. And I think that's what's key. It's getting that message out there.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. This is from Cordero. They say, I am pursuing a career in screenwriting and want to one day write for animation. What advice would you have for entering an industry like animation when you want to do something predominantly associated with live action media?
There's screenwriters in animation as well, so I wouldn't limit yourself. Just learn about the trappings. Like, you have to be very descriptive about certain things, because your script is going to be directly interpreted by the director, by storyboard artists, etc. And so, I would definitely learn the nuances and pick up some animation scripts and just see what those differences are. But I don't think it's a huge difference for both. It's a hard road, and you want to get out there and get as much projects finished and out, so that you can show people what you have, and then you work your way up from there.
Yeah, screenwriting for animation is not that much different from live action. It's just like subtle nuances that they can tell you in the rooms. Like, what your script is great. You just need to add a few more things so that the director and the storyboard artist know what you're talking about. So if you're like, okay, so we have this really cool fight between character A and character B, they fight. You have to tell us how they're fighting, where are they fighting? So like descriptors like that. So just focus on screenwriting, because screenwriting is way different than writing for the stage, writing a novel. And then you can be like, okay, well, now that I know the basics of screenwriting, how can I make this more animation? That's what I'm doing in my sketch writing class. I don't think SNL is funny. I think Sesame Street is hilarious. So I went in and I told them, I'm here to learn sketch writing, yes, but just so you know, I'm going to be writing for puppets. And they're like totally cool with that. And my teacher's like, you know what, that's awesome. I know how to write for animation. I know how to write for Sesame Street, essentially, because what is Sesame Street except for live action cartoons? And they're helping me with that. It's directing your own education and what you want out of something, which is something I also took away from Webster, is just like letting them know what you're interested in and how is it that you can take something that's so broad as screenwriting and making that animation specific. I made my teacher laugh yesterday, so I'm proud of me.
Okay, Scott asks, thanks for answering already, Josh. As a writer-director, how long do you think you should stay in the short films before you venture into feature-length projects?
Yeah, I'll answer real quick. Just kind of what I was getting at is basically, it's very hard to say because there's no like sort of clock on this. It's really like, short films are meant to teach you how to, have something very short that has a beginning, middle, and end that is compelling, and it sort of teaches you sort of a building block that is essentially going to be applied many, many times in a feature film. And so I guess my advice would be, it's not just like, okay, now you're ready to go into a feature films. It's, what is the feature you're telling? Is that strong? And it goes back to screenwriting, like we just talked about, like really make sure that script is as good and as tight and as strong as you can make it. And paper is cheap, and just do read-throughs, just invite all your friends over for pizza and beer and whatever you guys want to do, and just read through the script, get feedback, make sure it's really solid, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make that feature work. Your directing could be great. It could be just absolutely great, show a lot of craft, but the story is really where it's at. And then if you feel confident in your ability to direct because of that short form work, then I think a feature is fine. I would say if you know how to take care of yourself, having done a feature film now, and it's a grueling process, it is like a torture test in terms of stamina, and especially with an independent film. And so I would eat your Wheaties, get rest, and if you have a fairly non-destructive lifestyle, then that's maybe one way that you're ready for a feature film. And then for me, I'd only made a couple of short films. I only made like a couple of shorts in college, and I spent a long time just writing. And most of my directing work has been in corporate video, and just knowing I need to make a compelling 3-minute video about this boring company, and it's got to be really fun to watch. And so just those reps is how I got it. I didn't get it through short films. So, tell corporate docs for a while. It might help you break out and tell a cool narrative feature story. So I think you're just going to know when you know, but make sure that feature script is on point.
I don't know if the thought process that, shorts are necessarily a gateway to features. It's just another format. And actually, it's a lot harder in a lot of ways than a feature or a TV episode or longer form. You don't have the time to meander. You have to make people care about characters in 10 minutes or less, or whatever the runtime is. You have to add little details into this piece that makes that when people come back, they get a deeper experience. And it is a lot of hard work, and it shouldn't be taken lightly, because if this is your calling card, the benefit of shorts are that you can make them quicker than you can make a longer form film. But that should not mean that it's any easier to produce, right? I say on TV series or on films, you have a longer time to make your point. You have a lot more time to connect with characters. You can mislead people and take them in a different direction. You can shock people because you set them up for something. And in a short, you have to be really creative for that. So if you want to dive right into features, dive right into features. There's no reason that you have to stop off at shorts first, but just understand what you're getting into, right? You're going to be spending a lot more time, whether you're a writer, whether you're a director, whatever. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that, because I know a lot of featured directors and writers and creators and TV folks that work in TV as well, that do shorts still after they've done huge projects. It's because it is a challenge, and to do one right is so rewarding.
And tell a great story. And to Carl's point on how hard it is to do a short film, Hair Love is a brilliant, beautiful piece of work.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. My wife is not a big animation fan. I made her watch it. She cried because it was able to hit the marks over that period of time, and I can't even get her to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie. But this one, it just hit all the marks, and it's just so beautiful to watch. And the key is just telling a great story. If your story takes 7 minutes, make it the best 7 minutes you got. If it's a 2-hour story or a full series, make sure you just take the time to have people captivated. Because I'll tell you, Hair Love, my God, would be even Cops and Robbers that should have been nominated for Academy Award. Brilliant, but my God, it's so hard just to keep something that concise and keep people keep their attention. It's like a great commercial. You'll go, but I love commercials. I adore commercials because you got 30 seconds to get a message across, either make people laugh, invest, or cry. So you cannot go wrong. You got to tell a great story in the time that you have to tell it.
One thing to note about Hair Love, while you hear Lion Forge, you hear Matthew Cherry, and it seems like, this is our first rodeo. Bruce Smith, who created the Proud Family and has been at Disney for 30 years and, done millions of movies. Everett Downing, who comes from Pixar and everywhere else. We had a whole lot of folks on this project. And so sometimes it can look like, oh, these guys, did a short and it was just good. And it's the first thing out the gate. It was a lot of kind of seasoned folks on it. And so that goes back to show that, it's a medium like everything else, and you're going to fail at everything. And when you get good enough, it's going to be good. And so definitely I wouldn't look at that and say, let me pour all my heart into something. I would say definitely build the best team that you can. And that's the only way that you can really get there, and through that experience as well.
All right, as we're going to begin wrapping up here in a second, I have one more question for all of you. So a lot of us are, all of us who are watching are mainly students, and you have been students, and no matter what form it's been, what's something that school doesn't teach you? What skills have you used in a production and anything regarding your work that you didn't know before getting into the industry that have proved the most useful to you?
I'd say hitting a deadline. Once you can hit a deadline, it doesn't matter if you're the best. If you're reliable, you'll be working at Disney for 50 years because they can trust that you can get what they need done how they want it. So hitting a deadline and meeting that level of quality. Also, it's kind of heart-wrenching at times until you get to a position where you have a little bit more control, because you have to learn how to lose in a in an argument of ideas. And if you want to, if you might know the best way to do something, but if it's not your say, you're going to wind up doing it the way the production is supposed to happen. So
Mhm.
those are two things that is vastly different in the production environment from my perspective.
Yeah, going off of what Carl said, having working in production management and having been a storyboard revisionist where I'm very deadline focused. In school, you can get an incomplete for an assignment. You can turn it in like after break or whatever. There's no such thing in the industry. So they will tell you, you have 2 weeks to do this thing. What can you do in 2 weeks? And that's up to you as an artist and as your own personal manager to figure out, well, I had this big lofty idea, but now I have to condense it down. What are the most important things that I need to hit within the scene, within the sequence, within this short that I'm doing, and put those in. Like a semester to do your student films, I'm sorry, that's still really tough. But it's like, if you don't finish, I'm looking at you, Eric, yes, but you can still get an incomplete. My husband still has an incomplete for his senior film. It's been 10 years. But had that been like something you were completing for Netflix, you're going to get fired if you don't finish in time. Or someone's going to take it away from you and it's going to be something that you didn't intend. And it's just like, well, I just lost something. So, yeah.
Or you will end up losing money because every day you're late, you got fees and penalties that are thrown on top of your project. With seeing studios overseas that used to do a lot of the international work, they miss a deadline. My God, you're in trouble. You miss 2 or 3, you will never get another project again. You got to be on track, deliver the time it's expected, and you have zero say in the matter. You're expected to come out, start running. First challenge, you have to start running, and you have to be able to keep up, and you have to be able to count on your team. And in many universities and schools and whatnot, they don't teach that. You're learning as an individual, not as a team player. And you're so dependent. If you're working for a studio on a production, you have to count on the other guy being able to do his job just as well. And you have to be able to support it and be able to pass it on to the next guy. And it is tough. That is one of the biggest challenges. A lot of schools will say my graduates, 85% of my graduates are placed. That's not the question. You ask a studio, how many of their graduates are retained? And that's the reality, because they could not keep up or fit into the model of the expectation of the studios.
Plenty of all-nighters to finish work for clients. One of my biggest lessons was I worked for an agency for 11 years. And when I left the agency, I'd negotiated with them in order to be able to still provide production for them. And so I thought, yay, I'm on my own. So they went from being my bosses to being my clients, which is a bigger boss than my boss. So I would say that was something I didn't learn in college, that, there's a lot you don't know. Even if you think you know everything, don't act like you know everything. That's another thing I would suggest, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Yeah, so the company I work for, Vidzu Media, we all, as part of the company, we have leadership declarations that we sort of put out there, and that everybody can read and know that this is what we are promising to do in our role in the company. And I love it because it just makes us all live with integrity. Is you do what you say you're going to do, and it speaks to deadlines, but also speaks to just how you're going to bring it. Like in mine, I say I'm going to be prepared and positive at all times, because I think one of the most powerful things you can do in a project, even to clients, I always talk about this, like in the professional side, is I work for the project, I don't work for the client. And it means that I can say no to them. This is the permission I give to myself. I say no to them all the time. But what I do is it's always with a solution. It's always like, no, I don't think that's possible, especially if they're asking for something that's not inside the budget or the scope or whatever. But I will offer what we can do. And it's all about sort of knowing your worth. And this is built from countless sort of failed interactions with clients, countless failed, even when I was PAing, and you have to go get coffee and you mess up the order, and all these kinds of things. You can say, yeah, I messed up, and that's a good step in the right direction, but then you have to sort of take the next step and offer the solution and these kinds of things. And so it's that customer service of everything. It's what you're going to do for other people and what you promise to people and living up to that. I think that's all very important, because just like in filmmaking, like if I am an independent filmmaker and I'm asking all these people to be there and they're all making lower than their normal, like, pro wages, I have to promise to them that this is going to be the most important thing to me, and that I'm going to show them how hard I'm going to work. And if I do that every day, and they know that I'm out there first to show up, last to leave, kind of like just working as hard as I can, then it will show them that I am a person of integrity and that they can count on me. And that's important in everything that I've done in my career. And I failed a lot at that, and I've come to this conclusion because I haven't been that person sometimes, but that's who I am now. And that's what I didn't really totally live into when I was a student. So
I know we got to wrap up. I think the other thing that film schools by design don't necessarily teach you is that everything is a system to be worked, right? There's no clear rules ever. And don't ever be abusive, don't ever be problematic in that way, but know that no is not, that doesn't mean you're done. That just means you got to find a different way around it. Even at Webster, I ended up writing my own degree because I didn't want to take the classes I didn't want to take. Everything is a system. The film industry is a system. The commercial industry is a system. So don't worry about the direct path, because there never is one. Always find your way within that, and be forthright, be honest, be hardworking, all the things we've talked about, but also know that you're the only one who's going to call it quits, right? Everyone will tell you why you can't do something. Very few people other than yourself will figure out how to do the thing, whatever that is. And so if you just know that that's part of it, that will allow you to keep going. And it will never be fast. That's the other thing. It'll just never be fast.
That couldn't be a better way to end this panel. Thank all of you for coming, for your wonderful insight. I know I'm now motivated to get my short done, and I'm sure everyone else in the panel is, everyone else watching this is so much more motivated to keep this up. It's hard work, but we all love it. Thank you all so much. And for everyone watching, the next keynote is happening at 3 o'clock. Leo Tham's going to be speaking. Make sure you go to that as well. And everyone on the panel, thank you again so much for your time and generosity. I could do this all day if I wanted to, but sadly, deadlines are a thing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
yeah.
Pleasure.
All right, take care, everyone.